Welcome to the Indie Author Showcase. I'm Chad Robert Morgan, and today we have Scott Harper.
Glad to be here. It's my honor.
So, Scott, we met about a year ago. We're both survivors of HorrorCon.
Yeah. Luckily.
We have that HorrorCon support group between us.
Yeah,
We're forming.
especially the last one, especially. We definitely need a lot of members in it now.
You know, it's funny. There's another podcast called the Sex and Horror Podcast, and on that they had the one guy that enjoyed HorrorCon because he was all like, "Oh, it was great! I sold all these books." He's head of a I forget his name, but he's the head of a small publishing house, and nice guy. Talked to him. Had a chance to chat with him a couple times at HorrorCon. We had time at HorrorCon to chat.
Yeah, we did. I'm glad somebody did well.
I think he was the only one. I think unanimously we agreed.
I think you're right. Yeah.
But you're also at
I don't want to burn too many bridges here, but yeah, I think you're right.
We were also at Creep IE Aftermath together. Are you going to be at Creep IE at the end of January?
Yes, I will see you there, and I'm looking forward to whatever new models and books you produce.
I am working on finishing up our latest book, yes. So
very good.
Fingers crossed I'll get it done on time.
Okay.
But speaking of books, let's talk about yours for a minute. Now, full disclosure, it's been a year and it's still on my TBR list.
That's fine. I learned at this last convention that a lot of people buy the books and don't read them for a couple of years. I'm happy as long as they buy them and at some point read them. So don't worry about that.
Now, I will say this is like one of the most beautifully illustrated and covered books I've ever seen in my life. This is absolutely gorgeous. In fact, if you want it, like after the podcast offline, if you want to send some of the images, I can kind of put it on the show
Sure.
for the viewers to see.
No problem.
Beautiful artwork. Can you tell me a little bit about the artwork in the book?
Yeah, basically it's all handled by Sinister Smile. Their art director is a gentleman named Stephen Pajic, and he does all their artwork in-house. And basically for that book, I had purchased another cover, and I was going to self-publish at one point before Sinister Smile took it over for me. And he showed me that cover, and he's like, I like your cover, but check this out. And needless to say, we went with Steven's cover. That's the bomb. It gets all the attention. People that don't even read, they say, "Oh, I love your cover. I don't read, but I love your cover." And then the salesman, I switched to, well, I have Audible, so. But okay. Yeah, basically, Sinister Smile Press is known for their covers and their images. And actually, in the book, there are a number of images as well. So. All the more for the reader to enjoy.
See, now you tell me that you have Audible, because if I'd known that, I probably would have listened to this ages ago.
Oh yeah, the lady's name is Cassandra, and she does an excellent job. She has a very smoky voice. She does both volumes of the Lethal Lords, so something to look forward to.
That is something that I was working on in this last show I did. I just came off of Son of Monsterpalooza, and I get that too, where it's like I don't read, right? Which is stake through the heart of an author, you know. And I did do that. Like, well, why don't you read? I don't have. One gal was actually saying that it was because her eyes were going, right?
Yeah.
And she was becoming and that's when I said, "Have you heard of Audible?" And she goes, "No, I've not heard of Audible." Which who hasn't heard of Audible at this point, because they plaster the ads on the shows there. But I gave her the sales pitch for Audible, and she says, "Oh, I'm going to check that out," and everything like that. I actually had at least one person buy the audiobook right there at the booth.
Nice. Very good.
And has that happened with you where they go, "I don't read," and you say you have Audible? Do they like bring up the phone and? Yeah,
they bring it out. I show them how to find me on Amazon, and they pop it all up. I've done that a few times. I'm handing out. I get at those conventions. I'm sure you notice you get a lot of people that are smart conventioneers. What they do is they come in and they do one or two go rounds to see what's actually there. And then later on, they come back and they pick what they want. I've had that. I'm sure you had it too, numerous times where they'll come by, look at the books, and say, "Oh, okay, I've got other things to do," and they'll come back, and and you think, "Ah, they're not going to come back," and they usually do. It's kind of cool. But yeah, I hand out my business cards too, so they can take it home, and then they can check out my website. I'm on Amazon. They can find there's those Lethal Lords. There's different versions of the book, different editions. There's a Audible, there's an ebook, there's a paperback, there's a hardcover, and then there's a deluxe hardcover. And I think you bought the deluxes last time. So.
Yep, definitely the deluxe color edition.
Oh, I thank you for that
Yeah.
too, by the way.
Well, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to resist.
I think we were talking about it at Aftermath that you have books from two different publishers. Now you're small press publish, right?
That's correct. Yeah, I have my first books was actually was a collection of vampire gladiator stories about a character named Anton the Undying, and I was fortunate enough to have that published by small press Input Output, who've been very good to me. I think I had two collections of Anton stories, Anton's vampire gladiator and / turned monster hunter and his adventures over the years. He's looking to find a way out of his bloodlust, to find a cure for the bloodthirst. But I had 2 volumes, I think, before the Lethal Lords came around. And then Stephen Pajic and Bob Sargent were kind enough to publish my 2 volumes of Lethal Lords, 46 stories. I had accumulated a number of vampire and monster stories over the years. So they published those, and then just this year we did a roundabout with Input Output. I had decided I wanted to add some more to Anton's stories. So what we did was we fleshed out the first 2 volumes with a little more detail. And then we also added some more short stories and novellas. So we ended up coming up with the 3rd book, which was released August 31st, and was Ultimate Anton the Undying, which is kind of interesting because it collects the first 2 volumes as well. So if you buy Ultimate Anton, you get the first 2 volumes as well. So yeah, I do have 2 publishers, and I'm very glad for both of them because it saves me from self-publishing, which can be done very well and very successfully, but I appreciate all the help I get from my publishers. I'll put it that way.
Well, the minute I figure out how to self-publish successfully, I'll let you know.
Yeah, no,
yeah, I definitely.
Give me a holler.
I'd say what?
Said, give me a holler. I've got a 3rd book I'm trying to publish.
How does that work with the small press when you have the book you're trying to publish? And I'm take it you have to kind of sell it to the publisher, right?
Yeah, my stuff is kind of, it's not your average stuff like the vampire gladiators, collections of vampire stories. Those are kind of niche enough. The new book is a vampire barbarian, kind of Conan the Barbarian, and a few other short stories thrown in there. It's actually, technically, it's a novel. It's 41,000 words, so it bridges that 40,000 word novel. Technically, it's a novel. So what I do is I shop it around, see if anybody's interested. They take, it's a lot. It's almost, I think it's about 100,000 words. So they want to look through it first. So I've got a couple of people looking at it, and we'll see what happens, and we'll go from there. But right now it's in the shop around phase.
That is one of the nice things about being indie published is I get to write whatever I want. The downside is that I am working completely solo. I do not have anybody backing me up. I have nobody helping me with the marketing or the editing or anything like that. So there are definitely pros and cons to the small press versus the. I remember before COVID, there used to be what we call the Writers Coffee House. They're still around, actually. There's local chapters throughout the country. And the one I was going to was up in Burbank, and it was hosted by Peter Kleins. And one time he actually kind of did a whole spiel on publishers, and he's like, hey, I got this great idea for a werewolf story, and they're like, can you do one about vampires because that's really in right now? It's like, no, I really want to do this werewolf story.
Yep.
Yeah, can you make it a vampire? You know, that kind of thing. So it's there is definitely some trade-offs. I do like the freedom to do whatever I want, um, but it's also with the like literally I think just about the only person who has actually read my books are the ones that I meet at the conventions and literally hand it to them.
Yep.
I've had one person actually come up to me and says, "I've seen this book before." And I'm like, "No, you didn't."
Yeah. No, it's, yeah, I get it. It's even with a small press, they're limited in what they can do. So I end up taking on a lot of the burden myself. So I'm kind of in the same boat, basically.
So between the two publishers, all your books are vampire related, correct?
Yeah, they all have vampires in them. Vampires are my thing. I've been, ever since I was a kid, I found the whole vampire motive fascinating, the whole immortality powers and all that life after death that got a hold of me. I started off with superheroes. I was a big Marvel fan, and while I was reading Spider-Man and Hulk and Captain America, I happened upon this horror comics that Marvel published called Tomb of Dracula, which not everybody really knows about, but Marvel published a bunch of horror comics in the 70s, and some of them are pretty iconic. Tomb of Dracula, Dracula Lives, Tales of the Zombie. And I got to see basically they took all of Stoker's mythology and made Dracula this kind of anti-hero. And I always thought it was cool. The vampires had all these powers. They were obviously had some limitations and stuff, but I just went with that. And I think my my first love has always been the horror comics. That's what I started out with, and I think I'll always love them. I do get a chance once in a while to write some horror comics for a gentleman named Kevin Glover, who runs Scary Tales Publishing. But by and large, most of my publishing credits are in short story collections and so forth. But yeah, my vampires, all my stories have some vampires in it, other monsters, but vampires are my thing, we'll put it that way.
And they don't sparkle, right?
They don't sparkle.
Thank
I
God.
do kind of like the Stoker mythology, though. I'm not a huge fan of the burn up in sunlight thing like the Nosferatu. Mine just kind of lose their, like in the traditional Stoker mythology, they just lose their powers. So they're limited to the strength of the man, of their human form. Shouldn't say man, woman, human, whoever the character is, and they can't shapeshift. So
So, how long have you been writing? I mean, uh, not necessarily professionally, but I mean, I'm assuming you started when you were young. You started reading the comics, and I'm guessing at some point in that age, you're like, I'm gonna do my own, and started from there.
yeah, I remember. I think it was like 81, 82, my eighth grade. My teacher, I think her name was Mrs. Fultz, if I remember. She made us have write a journal entry every day. So I decided I was going to write my own zombie story. So I started writing a zombie story that was kind of loosely based around Tales of the Zombie. And also I read about, I hadn't seen it at that point, but I read about a zombie movie called Sugar Hill, which is kind of an interesting flick if you ever see it. So I wrote about a nightclub owner getting murdered and then his relatives bringing him back to life through voodoo. And I started there. And then I wrote a number of stories over the years, just when I had time. It was first published in a old publication called Vampire's Crypt by author editor named Margaret Carter, who was always very, very kind to me, always very honest about my stories. And then she would give us token payments, like $5 a story in 1997, which, it's just thank you and appreciate the work sort of thing. But I enjoyed it. And then, believe it or not, I think my first time I got paid for a story, the movie 30 Days of Night?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's based on a comic book.
Right.
Steve Niles wrote a graphic novel called 30 Days of Night, and there was an offshoot series called Bloodsucker Tales. And I was go to the comic store and I'd read Bloodsucker Tales, and I noticed at the end of every issue there was a prose story, like just a story about vampires, and it wasn't necessarily the same mythology as 30 Days of Night. They would have, more Stoker-esque stories with no reflections and stuff. I'm a sucker for the traditional stuff, and the no reflections, the running water and stuff like that. So I decided I'd write a story about a vampire who gets so bored he goes out and kills other monsters just to stay kind of like mentally with it. And I think I called it Reason d'etre, Reason to Be. And I sent it off to Bloodsucker Tales, and they published it. I think it was Bloodsucker Tales #6. And at the time, I think they gave me like something like $100 or something for it, and I'd never been paid anything over like $5. So I was thrilled. I thought it was the end. I thought I could quit my day job and just start writing. Well, obviously, it didn't work out that way, but that was the beginning of me trying to get stories published through people that people with some money and people who could distribute the stories. And then gradually over time, I got published in some smaller press stuff. Doug Draw's Weird Book has a long history, a long horror history, and Doug was kind enough to do a blurb for me on my Lethal Lords. But I got published in Weird Book. I got published in Space and Time. That was a big deal for me, Space and Time, because when I was younger, there was a vampire book called, what was it? I forget. I apologize. Gordon Lindsay was the author. He wrote it, and it was about a a CIA agent named Blood, who was a vampire and also a CIA agent. And I read that book, and it was kind of Marvel-esque, because Lindsay had his vampires do all the tradition, all sorts of crazy stuff, turning into mist, turning into wolves, super strength, and then he would do things that were kind of cool. Like Linsner decided that if vampires could control their molecules, they could do other things, like they could shape their shape and mimic other people's forms, and then stretch their limbs and lengthen their limbs. So I got a kick out of that. So I got long story short, I'm kind of blathering here. I got a story published by Space and Time, which it was actually a story about a wrestler, professional wrestling and vampires, which I think it was called Fresh Juice. But that was a big deal to me to get published in Space and Time, which it's still, I think, a semi-pro. So, and then semi-pro magazine, and then to have been published by my vampire writer hero, Gordon Lindsay publication, that was a big deal to me. So gradually over time, what happened is I accumulated so many stories, and then I got lucky and started getting published by Sinister Smile. They have a series of anthologies called If I Die Before I Wake, and I started getting fortunate to get published in their anthologies. And before I knew it, I had enough stories to shop around some collections. And then Bob Sargent and Stephen Padgett were kind enough to publish my collections for me. And then also the input-output, I saw that they were doing paying for serials, like little ongoing stories / novellas. So I came up with the Anton novellas and sent it to them, and they liked it, so they published it. So that's another story. But that's my background. A lot of, still to this day, get a lot of rejections because I think they like the younger writers are more in vogue now. I noticed that my writing is a little bit more like the 70s and 80s style that I grew up with. So I still, even though I'm published, I get my rejections, and you just grin and bear it. And then when you get the next one gets accepted, it's all worth it. So
Yeah,
keep plugging along.
I was going to ask you what your advice was to somebody who is constantly getting rejection letters, because that is, well, I was going to say that's part of the game, but as someone who's self-published, my only rejection is from the audience.
Yeah, no, I get it. That's cool. It's good that you can do that. Yeah, I just read. If you read Stephen King's On Writing, he had his fair share of rejections. Even Lovecraft got rejected. So, and then I realized that my stuff, I admit it, I'm pretty much only interested in vampire stuff. Other stuff doesn't really interest me as much. So I'm a niche guy. If I get in, great. If not, at some point it'll be published in a collection. So, because I have faith in myself that eventually it'll be published. So, and I know that the publishers are looking for what they want, and I've gotten numerous ones where they say, "Hey, you made it to the final round. We decided to go with something else." That's fine, because then I just add it to my collection, and when that gets published, I still get paid. So, and then obviously, small press getting paid is not the main thing. It's distributing your ideas and letting people read them and see if they like it. And my biggest kick is when I'm at these conventions, these people that have bought my books will come up and tell me that they've read the books and loved it. They'll actually go, a lot of them were hesitant. They bought the first volume and then they're like, "Oh, I want the second volume now too." So I go, "Yeah, you want to check out Anton the Undying while you're at it?" And I haven't had too many people say, "I really hate your stuff. I will never read it again." I can't think of anybody that said that to me. So, but I am a niche guy. I am a Mr. Vampire.
I actually kind of right now have the opposite problem, because now people think I'm a niche guy, because my first book is kind of a its own thing, right? It started as a um, very Silent Hill inspired type story, right? Where there's a
Yeah.
small town, there's a lot of different types of monsters, and they're all original creations. The second book I did was based on a creature from Filipino mythology. And I get a lot of people that come, especially from the Filipino community, that get really excited, going, my mom used to tell me stories about that, or I've actually had a few people from the Philippines say, "I've seen one,"
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Okay, if you say so," and they're like, "No, I'm not kidding. It was on the roof. I saw it crawl. I saw it fly away. These things are real. You don't mess with them. I've seen one of these things," and I'm like, "Okay, just back away," that kind of
Yeah.
thing. Um, and then for my um, what I did was because we had so many kids see the books, they get very very excited about it, but they're very very mature books. So I wrote a collection of short stories for younger readers. Our first young adult book, but the first short story returned to the mythology of the Philippines, and so that's what's
Yeah.
on the cover. So what I found was in this um, last convention, everybody was, "Oh, so you do Filipino stuff?" And it's like, well, no, I did a Filipino
Yeah.
book and a Filipino short story, but I'm not the Filipino monster guy. I write whatever I want to write. Um, so it's kind of a weird thing where, I mean, in the one sense, I think it's kind of cool where you got that niche, because I think people kind of expect that, right? Because it came to me at my booth and says, "So what's this about?" And they just, with their hand, like it's all one um, overarching story, and it's
Yeah.
like, no, you know, they're all separate things. Um, but from your standpoint, they come to you, they know they're getting a book about vampires. Um, they know their vampires aren't going to sparkle.
Yeah.
Uh, so I'm assuming that you use that to your advantage, because you become a very known entity at that point to your readers.
Yeah. They know what to expect with me. Um, they know that there's going to be lots of action. There's going to be bloodshed. There's going to be lots of different monsters, and they know there's going to be a vampire. So it's what I do. It's what I enjoy. When you write, you tear off a little piece of your soul and you put it in paper, or you put it, you type it in. And so if somebody rejects that, it obviously it's not something you enjoy. But I only write about something that interests me. I've done other, I actually had another story get published because I was requested that didn't include any vampires, and it didn't really interest me. And I think unfortunately the story shows it didn't interest me. So that's all I can do. But I got to admit that when I go to these conventions, I get inspired by you, because I see you over there with your books, and then you took it a step further and you made the models based on the books. And I forget exactly what you call it. I call it a penogla, and I know you have a different name for the flying head vampire monster.
The Mananagal.
Yeah, there you go. And that piece of work you did is very nice. It's a very, the thing is not only if people have seen your displays, not only can you write, but you are an excellent painter, and your models are very detailed. So my hat's off to you, because all I can do is write. I can't create art, I can't paint, and I can't make models. So like I said, I'm always very impressed by your guys' display, and your son helping you out.
Well, in all modesty, the most of the models I've had a lot of help with. Our dog monster was originally concepted by a friend of mine named Stephen Wells, and then my day job modeled it for me as a favor. And then the Mananagal, we started building it for the cover, and I started it, and it was just like a rough, it wasn't even a rough draft. It was like an outline of a model. And then my boss at work, Chris Williams, who runs Phantom Studios, his own thing, but he took it and he ZBrushed it up, and then he went to our character modeler, Jonathan Lopez, and said, "Hey, can you help me get this across the finish line?" And he helped with that. When I did the Tick Balong, I was trying to do that by myself because I wanted to be more independent, and even then I was like, "Hey, J-Lo, how do I do the hair?" And he actually wound up doing the mane of the Tick Balong in ZBrush for me. So I've had the advantage of working in a job where not only am I working with very, very talented artists that can help me out when I need to, but I'm working in a company that is extremely supportive. And that's one reason I've stayed with this company for so long, because it's a small game company. They do good work, but being a small independent game company, it's kind of like being a small independent press. You don't have the safety and the big umbrella and the financial stability of saying working for EA or working for Sony directly or something like that. But just being with these very talented people who are not only talented but so supportive and helpful and go out of the way to help me. I mean, that's just a fringe benefit that you're not going to get at any other job, and that is not the only reason, but that is one of the big reasons why I've stayed with this company for going on 10 years now, I think.
Yeah, nice. So no, it's good to have all the support you can get, the better. So if you got that little nest there to help you out, more power to you. But yeah, like I said, I've always been impressed by your guys' Spectral Inks displays at the conventions. Always caught my eye. And then just real quick, so people don't say I'm senile. I do remember that name of the book that I was talking about. The book is The Spy Who Drank Blood by Gordon Linsner. So haven't completely lost it.
No, trust me, I'm getting to the point where I'm finding myself having more and more Biden moments at the moment. So I'm.
Yeah. I've had my share.
Yeah, I think we're all getting there.
Yeah, it's happy times.
I swear to God, my next horror book is going to be about a guy who's starting to lose it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I even have a title picked out. It's called Slipping. I already have it planned out, and I know what's going to happen in it. And it's like, is he actually slipping through different realities, or is he just losing his mind? We don't know yet. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's a good concept. A little Twilight Zone-ish. Just a tad.
So what's next for you?
Basically now, it's called Blood Quest. Blood Quest, aka Vanther the Vanquisher. That's my Conan the Barbarian, basically. That collection is written, it's being reviewed, and at some point it'll be published, hopefully by a publisher and not by me. Well, I actually have a third option that way. Have another person I ran into today that may be interested. So that's it. And then I do whenever Kevin Glover, my buddy at Scary Tales Publishing, whenever he needs a story, I do horror stories for him. So just real quick, I thought I'd show you. I brought this over. Hopefully I don't knock everything over. But this is a comic that I wrote the story for. The title story. It's called Hideout of Horror, and it's basically a bunch of gangsters meeting the old Universal monsters types and getting in a little scuffle. And Kevin is good. He likes me to write horror comics for him, and I get a kick out of it. We've got one coming up, basically, that's mobsters versus monsters, and we've got Nazis versus monsters, and then the latest one I wrote, which I'm waiting for Kevin, if he's watching this, to get back to me, is Gunslingers versus monsters with Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday and all those fun folks. So that's what I'm doing. And then I am promoting, just since this is my main means of promotion, I am promoting the Ultimate Anton the Undying. I do every morning. I try and promote it. 500 plus pages of vampire violence and monster mayhem. So that's what I'm up to nowadays. And then if somebody finds another idea for me, maybe I'll work on that for them.
Okay.
But the good thing about I am retired from my other day jobs. So the good thing about that is if I want to work, if you can call what I do work, I work. And if I don't, then I sit at home and watch Netflix or go to the gym or walk my dog, and nobody really cares.
Oh, you're in place.
You'll get there someday. You'll get there. It'll happen.
End of the month, I turn 53, so I figure I got about another 10 years to go.
Okay, very good. Yeah.
I'm getting there slowly but surely.
It'll go quick because you're busy every weekend. You work all week, and then your weekends you're doing conventions. So.
Well, speaking of which, what's your convention schedule? You already said you're doing Creep IE at the end of January.
Doing Creep IE, and then we just signed up for today. I forgot the exact name of it, but there's a vampire convention in the Burbank Marriott in March. And if you're if you're interested, I'll send you the info. But they were at putting out their cards at Creep IE, so you may have gotten it. I signed up today, so we're going to do that. Then we'll be at Monster Palooza. We're happy to be there. And then we will do, if we're invited, which I assume we will be, we'll do the Creep IE Aftermath, and that should be our schedule for the year. What are you guys up to?
Well, as of right now, we are scheduled for Creep IE and Monster Palooza. We just did Son of Monster Palooza, and like yourself, I'm assuming I'll be invited back for Aftermath since they invited me to the main show. Those are the only ones. The first two are the only ones that are confirmed. I'm assuming I'll be doing the other two as well. With that said, I am still hunting to get into a few other conventions. Again, it's every time I talk to people about this, they always have the same thing. Convention X sucks because they won't talk to me, but Convention Y is awesome. It's always about space availability. I was talking to one guy who got into Texas Frightmare Weekend, and he said it took him like 5 years to get in there.
Yeah.
Right. So I am doing my time trying to get into Texas Frightmare Weekend. I usually don't do out of state, but from what I hear, it's huge.
So, very good. Yeah.
I'm also working to try to get into Midsummer Scream.
Yeah.
which is probably the biggest locally.
Yep.
Then there's I heard of one in Fresno.
Yeah, you were telling me about that.
From what I heard, it went rather well.
Right.
I think they had their first one this year, so I'm trying to keep an eye out for when those registration dates open and see what I can do to get into there.
Okay.
And then the other one I'm still trying to get into is Creep It Real.
Oh yeah, very good. Yeah, no, yeah, that's down here in Santa Ana, as I recall.
Yep. If I can get into all those, I'm going to be busier than one. Oh, and there's also I can't remember if I've signed up for it already or not, but WonderCon.
Oh, the Anaheim. Yeah, that's a big deal. Yeah, that's the comic. Yeah, that would be. Yeah, if you know what, more power to you.
I would recommend trying to get into WonderCon because small press table is only like 350.
Yeah,
So
and I think we talked about this before. My stuff is kind of action superhero based, even though it's about monsters. So yeah, I might have my a crowd there.
well, it was shit.
It happens.
We fix that in post. Uh, snip, snip.
There you go.
Where was I? All right, WonderCon. Um, let me get that. Just fix it right there. That looks like a. Okay, that's better. Um, when we did WonderCon, there was about must have been like 4 or 5 rows of just us indie publishers,
Yeah.
and it was. I mean, it ran the gambit. And what I was trying to do was run around to all the different authors and what do you write? What are your books about? What's your genre? And then
Yeah.
whenever somebody came by the table and said, I was like, what do you like to read? And it's like, do you like horror? Do you like sci-fi comedy? It's like, no, I don't like that. It's like, well, what do you like? Well, I'm more of the fantasy guy. Oh, that's that guy over there. Go talk to him.
Yeah.
Oh,
Very
I
good.
like my hardcore like military science fiction. Oh, those are those guys over there.
Yeah.
Um, there was one guy that I know. Do you know Julian Stone? Because he's been in a few of these.
Right off the top of my head, it doesn't ring a bell.
Uh,
I am 56, and I'm not exactly the most adroit fellow mentally nowadays.
he wrote a book called It's Alive. It's a historical fiction about the making of the movie Frankenstein.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Look
I think
through.
I've actually got that book somewhere in my collection. I know. Yeah.
Great book, really great
Yeah.
book. But even at this last convention, I would get people to go, what do you like to read? It's like I don't like fiction. I like nonfiction. I was like, well, it's not nonfiction, but it's sort of nonfiction adjacent. And I would point him over to Julian. And I remember at WonderCon, he came up and said, dude, thank you, because I must have had about 4 or 5 people come by my booth saying you
Oh,
send them my way.
yeah.
So, um, I mean, that's where the whole idea of this podcast came out, was this idea of us as independent uh, publishers, independent or indie authors. Um, we were all out there in this big, huge area in WonderCon, basically running solo, all of us.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why? We can be working. I almost did it again. I almost knocked it work.
I saw that. I wasn't going to say anything. I was going to wait, and if it happened, it
Small
happened.
earthquake. No. Uh,
Timber.
um, but that's where the birth of the podcast came from. Is like, why are we all working individually when we could be working collectively to try to support each other? Um, because if somebody is really into vampires, if that's their thing, you know, we're not competing. I'm not. The closest I got is the Mananagal, which is sort of like a Filipino vampire, but that's like
With
really
entrails.
loose definition. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody's like, I'm in the vampires, go talk to Scott.
Yeah.
You
I'm
know?
here.
Exactly. We should be working together to try to match the reader to the genre they prefer.
Yeah.
Instead of just all out here in the wild, we can be doing more collectively than we do as just individuals.
I agree. Yeah. No. WonderCon. Yeah, it's something I should definitely investigate, and I do like your concept of meeting and promoting other people. That's for sure. Everybody needs some help.
I remember this last one at Son of Monster Palooza. Way in the front corner was a independent publisher, and all their books were like little kids books, like the first, scary Halloween stuff for like preteens and stuff like that. And so whenever I had somebody in the booth that had little ones, I was like, check out that corner. It's like go, because I don't have stuff for anybody that small. Right. I mean,
Yeah.
the youngest I got is young adult, but I mean, if they got 4 or 5 year olds, I'm not their audience. You know what I mean?
No,
So
I know what you mean.
so let's wrap this up with a little bit of controversy. I saw in a post you did not like Salem's Lot.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I could, if you've ever read King's book, it's a great book. It's basically Dracula comes to America, but with a lot more interesting characters, and it's very well done. Barlow is not some mindless monster like they always portray him in these movies. He's very refined and smart, and he's very dangerous. And yeah, the new one on Max, I watched it. Was not too interested in it. I had heard bad things about it. It had been in limbo for a number of years. The characters are underdeveloped. The acting, other than there's a few decent, like the main Lewis Pullman, he's a good actor. A lot of the others I could do without. Just didn't do justice to the novel, and it's not even anywhere near as good as the David Soul version. So I'm sorry.
Was that the original movie or was that the miniseries?
The miniseries in '79 that was really good. They did a one in 2004 with Rob Lowe. I didn't really like it. Some people like it. It wasn't for me. I like the original. James Mason, David Soul are very good. The Barlow character, even though he's not anywhere near what he is in the novel, he's iconic because the blue skin and the fangs and the claws. It's iconic. It is what it is. So I would prefer if you want to see Salem's Lot, I would say first of all read the book. The book, King's early stuff is just fantastic. Monumental is an understatement. And then the David Soul, I forgot the actor that plays Straker. I think it's Richard Mason, something like his last name's Mason. A British actor, very well known, does a fantastic job as Straker. So, yeah, the new one. If you want to watch something on Max, watch The Penguin. Colin Farrell is awesome. You can barely recognize him, and the actress that plays Sophia is phenomenal. Everybody in that show is phenomenal. I've watched 4 episodes and I'm addicted. So if you want to watch something on Max, I suggest The Penguin. And I apologize. I love my vampires, but Salem's Lot 2024, I'm going to pass on it. Wasn't that great?
My thoughts were it was if you're looking for a good Stephen King adaptation, this wasn't it.
Yeah.
I liked the movie,
Okay.
but this was like, okay, we've basically thrown the book away at this point. That's fine. So
Yeah.
we're divorced from the book. This is its own thing. From that standpoint, because I haven't read the book in like ages. I think I was in high school, so I wasn't that married to the source material.
Mm-hmm.
But I do remember there was at least 2 other adaptions that were more. Like I remember, I think it was in the Rob Lowe one where he was actually talking to the girlfriend after she turned, and she was like, she wouldn't come inside the house because he didn't invite her in,
Right.
and she was like trying to come on out and everything and that kind of thing. So I mean, in the movie, it's just basically a knockdown, drag down fight,
Yeah.
and everything like that. So it definitely lost some of the emotional impact. But in terms of just watching a good, vampire movie, and it had some really good creepy scare moments that was just like, okay, that's freaky as shit. I like that.
I got to admit there were a couple of gotcha moments. You're actually the second person I've talked to today that that liked it. My buddy Nick Rampone called me today and asked me the same question, and I gave the same response. And then he's like you. He's like, well, I liked it. So everybody's entitled to their opinions. I just thought it could have been so much more. That's all.
No, I mean, like I said, I agree with you. If you're looking for like something that's true to the book, if you're a fan
Yeah.
of the book, I can see why you're not happy with this because they threw the book away.
Yeah.
It was sort of like Running Man. I remember reading Running Man and the movie. They literally the title's the only thing those two things have in common.
Yeah.
Um,
That's what I heard. Yeah.
yeah, it's totally divorced from the original source material. It's not
Yeah.
even in the ballpark.
Well,
Um,
the original book, Barlow has a lot of lines and talks, and you get insight into his character and the way he thinks, and you get basically an expanded version of Dracula beyond what Stoker did. So I've always been disappointed that I think that's the Rutger Hauer version. I don't remember much about it, other than he changed shape when he died, and hope spoiler, he dies.
I'm gonna have to start watching all the other ones. I think the other ones are on Max as well, aren't they? The original movie and
Yeah,
then
I
the miniseries.
saw the Rob Lowe. Basically, the Rob Lowe one has him on the cover and says Rob Lowe, Salem's Lot. And I just remember Rutger Hauer plays Barlow, and he talks, but Rutger obviously is a great actor, and everybody knows him for Blade Runner and stuff like that. He did two vampire movies. He did the original Buffy movie with Christy Swanson, and I know. Well, he was also in one of the sequels to that Dracula 2000, the one with Jason Lee as a vampire hunter. He played Dracula in that, so he's played vampires a number of times. That one didn't do much for me, I got to admit. But I'm probably making more enemies than friends here because people are going, I love the Rob Lowe Salem's Lot. It was the greatest thing ever made. So
I did like the what AMC did with Interview with a Vampire. I saw the first season of that on Netflix. That was really good.
yeah, the second season is similar. It's very good. The actors are just phenomenal. They do change some of the stuff, but not in a way that detracts from it. I think it enhances it. So yeah, season 1, season 2, Interview with the Vampire, AMC, awesome. Looking forward to the season 3 with Vampire Lestat. With I think his name's Sam Reed is the actor that plays him.
I've only seen season 1 because that's what's on Netflix. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, season 2 it's substantial.
Yeah. So, and this is from our resident vampire expert. So
it's the Scott Harper seal of approval for AMC's Interview with the Vampire, and also the approval for the 1979 Tobey Hooper classic miniseries Salem's Lot. I give my approval.
And definitely not the new one. So.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know I've disappointed a couple of people here. I can tell today already, but yeah,
like I said, I see it. I mean, it's if you're married to the source material, I can see why you wouldn't like it because it really just throws the book away and does its own thing.
Yeah, but I've said enough bad things about it. I will agree with you. There are a couple of scenes in there that do grab your attention. So yeah, I will admit that.
All right, and with that, Scott, thank you very much for joining the Indie Author Showcase.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
All right. See you. And since my partner is not here, on his behalf, toodaloo. I swear to God, it's the best we've come up with so far.
Hey, works for me. Yeah, I'm just glad neither of our dogs intervened. There we go. Now we just pissed off more people. So. Oh well.
All three people that watch the podcast, I think.
I was going to say that the fourth guy was going to tune in, and he saw that, and he's like I'm a Buddhist, dude. I'm out of here. I ain't got time for you guys. You got two old guys talking smack.
Well, with that, toodaloo.
All right, very cool. Glad to have been here.